Hello, Year 12. I hope you're all good. I hope you had a nice half term. I know a lot of you have been a bit stressed out with sort of EPQ deadlines and things, and you're all getting a little bit sort of fed up with the current situation, which I can understand. So I hope you did manage to get some rest as well and kind of get back on top of things, ready for the final half term of the year. So the good news is we probably will be done with the Anglo-Saxons course within a couple of weeks, okay, and then we can move on to coursework, but we obviously do have a little bit more content to get through and one final essay to do as well. So we've got to finish today the kind of the Vikings narrative of Aethelred's reign. Obviously, he's king for a long time, just under 40 years. We do also need to have a little look at what's going on in terms of the law code and culture as well. But the main stuff that we need to know about Aethelred and what happens in his reign is just what goes on with the Vikings. So there is a lot of events in there, but actually, it's quite a simple story in comparison to some of the more tricky stuff we have been learning about. So hopefully that is a nice, slightly easier way to finish the course. So today we're going to have a look at something that I kind of alluded to in our Zoom lesson the other week, which was how far we can blame Aethelred for what happened. Obviously, it is a disaster. Let's be real here. It does not go well for him at all. He loses his kingdom. Twice he loses his kingdom, and he doesn't really respond to those Viking attacks in any sense that can really be seen as particularly effectively. But I say today we're going to have a think about, okay, so how far was that actually his fault? Are there other factors here that we can potentially point the finger at? And specifically, are there any other individuals that we can say perhaps should take the blame more than Aethelred himself? Okay, so that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at kind of incidents of disloyalty and nobles just generally not doing their jobs properly and making things a lot harder than they needed to be. So we had this discussion in our Zoom lesson a couple of weeks ago, which is we thought about, okay, so what reasons are there that it's all gone so horribly wrong for him? Okay, reason number one, we said that Denmark itself had become a much more powerful kingdom by this stage. We kind of had this degree of centralised power. They've become a unified Christian nation under Harold Bluetooth. You remember connecting devices, and then now his son Sweyn Forkbeard is a very, very strong king of this new royal power over in Denmark. And we know that Denmark is a lot more kind of coordinated now because we can look at the fact they're building burhs, they're building fortresses, ring forts, the equivalent of a burh for them, in places like Freikat and Aggersborg, and they've got much bigger fleets, much better trained armies, and just generally they're a much more significant enemy than perhaps has been faced before. We've also got Aethelred's own weaknesses. We can't ignore those. He did make some pretty poor decisions, particularly, things like opting for tributes, things like the St. Brice's Day massacre, which was perhaps a bit of a big thing to kind of go for that perhaps wasn't very sensible, and so on. So, yeah, he is not the best leader in the world. We have to accept that. Danish military strength, so it kind of ties in with this one, just the fact that they are a much more formidable foe. There's lots of very able leaders leading these forces, none of that Olaf Sitrickson weakness. These are really good leaders that are coming over from Scandinavia at this point. The fact he lost at Malden, this big turning point, big sort of blow to his confidence, this kind of, he loses a really key ealdorman, Beatnoth, and it kind of causes him to believe that the Vikings cannot be defeated in battle. Tribute itself, as we've said, it's a short-term solution. It gets rid of the problem, but not permanently. It incentivizes further invasions, and it just shows off how rich you are, which is not really something you want to do when you are facing a group of people that might want to come and conquer you. If they realise that your country is wealthy, that's, if anything, going to make them want to conquer you even more. So yes, tribute, quite a flawed strategy. And then this is the one we're going to look at today, which is issues with the nobility. Okay, so what is it that the English nobles, how was their behaviour also to blame for what happens? So, we're going to have a look in a little bit more detail at what these things are in a few moments, or rather you are. But we talked quite a lot about Eadric Streona. Eadric the Acquisitive is what that means, Streona, because he took so much land and took so much power. He was a big problem, but he wasn't the only one. So the first couple of questions I want you to think about are related to kind of using this as an opportunity to revise a little bit. So firstly, do we know that any other kings that we've studied have had similar issues? Is he the first king that potentially has had problems with his nobles? And of course the answer is no. So think back to Aethelred. Think about, he had 12 ealdormen on his charters that were appearing before Battle of Eddington. How many of them are on there afterwards? Okay, let's see if you can remember that little figure. We know there's a guy called Wulfhere of Hampshire, who we know we know from a later charter, he got in trouble for his desertion of his lord and his country. So there's definitely issues with disloyal ealdormen for Alfred. We could also talk about Aethelstans. This is something that I think Daisy came up with last time we had a meeting, in that there was this issue with powerful kindreds, so powerful family groups, kind of thinking they're above the law. He had that problem. He also had officials not doing their duties properly, and we know that because he legislates a lot for it in his law codes. Obviously, thievery, theft, that he sees as disloyalty as well. And of course, another very big example is poor old Eadred and Wulfstan of York, who kept switching sides, going over to Eric Bloodaxe and so on. So there are lots of other examples you could talk about, and what I would suggest you do is go back through some of your notes, use this as a bit of a sort of revision exercise, and do that. And then secondly, how did they respond to these? So again, as part of that kind of looking back, well, how did they deal with these problems? So in terms of Alfred, obviously these ealdormen are disappearing from charters. So either they're dying, they're being exiled, or they're just, Alfred is somehow removing them. We know that in his law code, which is 893, thereabouts, it's released, the only crime punishment by death is treachery. He gets everyone over the age of 12 to swear an oath of loyalty to him. So Alfred, he's quite hot on this loyalty business. We also know that if you kind of think of feuding as also a way of kind of threatening his authority, he does take steps to limit feuding as well. If you remember, he says they've got to wait 7 days, so that tries to calm down that unrest as well. With Athelstan, so in terms of his people not carrying out their duties properly, there's lots of law codes he puts in to deal with that. So for instance, in 2 Athelstan, every reeve has to go around and get a pledge from everyone in their shire that they're going to follow the laws. And in 5 Athelstan and 4 Athelstan, both of those, there is a further tightening up of the rule of the reeve, so increasing the fine if they don't do their job properly, and so on. And also in 5 and 6 Athelstan, there is legislation for dealing with powerful kindreds, which is effectively the first stages. If they challenge the king's authority by using their power, they are moved to another area of the country, i.e. away from their power base, and then if there's a repeat offence, they get treated like thieves, which, if you remember, was it was death. So there, he did deal with it in terms of his law codes. In terms of Wulfstan of York with Eadred, his response was, if you remember, to demote him. So he was Archbishop of York, the most powerful man in northern England, apart from the ealdormen. He loses that position and he is made Bishop of Dorchester. So it's one step down from Archbishop, and Dorchester is down in sort of towards Wessex. So it's much less northern. It gets him away from the problem, which is quite a clever strategy, really, because obviously you don't really want to kill a bishop. It doesn't look great. So by demoting him, you get rid of him without actually having to kind of commit that sin. So those are the previous kings. The third question I want you to think about is whether you think those were effective responses. I can't really necessarily tell you what to think there, but you need to make a decision. Do you think that those previous kings dealt with those challenges in an effective way? Okay, obviously with Athelstan, the fact he keeps changing his law code, I don't know what that means. Okay. So what I then want you to do is I've given you a set of sources, some information about the various different traitors in Aethelred's reign. What I want you to do, you've got a copy of this map. I have circled the key locations for you on it, just in case you can't find places. But what I want you to do is around the map, annotate with where those key betrayals take place. Okay, or not necessarily betrayals, but just failures. Okay, so for instance, the Battle of Maldon, we could use that as one example. Beartnoth is an idiot. He gives up his advantage and lets the Vikings cross that causeway. So you would annotate here with what happened there. Please make sure you are being as detailed as possible, okay? Because obviously this is your notes, all right? So you need the detail to be on there. Just to be clear, this is the River Humber, all right? If you don't know what that is the River Humber, okay? That's why this is called Northumbria, because it is north of the Humber, okay? Just to be clear with that. And then when you've written each betrayal on there, what I want you to do is for each one, I want you to rate it out of 10, with 10 being the greatest betrayal ever, and 0 being, not betrayal at all. Okay, so rate them out of 10, and then explain that rating. So why do you feel that that was a 5 out of 10 scale betrayal, or whatever you've put? Okay. What I then want you to do is consider whether Aethelred did enough to deal with these problems. So we've had a look at what Athelstan and Alfred and Eadred did when they were faced with disloyalty. What does Aethelred do? Okay, and basically this is what he does. Okay, this series of events, which I'm not going to read out to you, this is Aethelred's response. Okay, to the various challenges he faces. Okay, if it's not on here, he didn't do it. So there are definitely individuals who basically aren't punished at all. Okay, but there are 1 or 2 occasions when he does seem to respond. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to have a sheet that has kind of basically 2 sides with a timeline down the middle. On the right hand side, I want you to summarise the information you got from here. So summarise each betrayal. And then on the left hand side, you're going to summarise these events. So you kind of have like a visual representation of what betrayals does he face, and then how does he deal with them. And you've kind of got it in a nice little timeline so you can see the chronology of when this is happening. And then when you've done that, you're going to answer this question for me to kind of top off today's work, which is, did Aethelred do enough? Okay, did he do enough to keep his nobles under control? Do you feel he should have done more? Okay, because that's kind of the key issue here. If we're going to say that the main reason he failed to deal with the Vikings was his nobles, then that only is a strong argument if then you can say, well, yeah, that's because he didn't deal with it. Otherwise, you could just say, well, it's still his weakness. You could say it's yes, the nobles are annoying, but if Aethelred had dealt with it better, it wouldn't be a problem anymore. So you need to consider, has he done enough? Could we realistically have expected Aethelred to do more to deal with these challenges that he faces, and to punish his nobles for causing him problems? Okay, so that's today's work. Obviously, any issues, as ever, please do email me. What I probably will get you to post this answer on Teams, just so I can have a little look, and we'll talk about it on Wednesday as well. So usual thing, by the way, I'll see you on Wednesday at 11. That is now going to be a weekly thing, so I will look forward to seeing you all there. So if you can't make it, do let me know in advance, please. All right, guys, speak to you soon.